Hi guys, day 2 of the Food and Body Obsession workshop. We're going live today for day 2 to talk about why we are obsessed. First, I wanted to do a little bit of a recap of yesterday. Yesterday, I told you guys about my story with food and body obsession and how I started off as a young mom who was constantly yo-yo dieting, trying to get the extra weight of pregnancy off, and moved into being completely obsessed, and how those two things were really similar. So yesterday I asked you guys to share your homework with me, and your homework was to do a little bit of journaling about your own story with food and your body. And I was just blown away at the homework assignments that I received over email and through Instagram last night and this morning. They're still coming in. I just had another one come in just now. And reading these stories are just so humbling to me and also heartbreaking. And I know that when you're writing that story down and you're looking at it right now, you're looking at it in the middle of the story. And I want you to know that. If you had asked me all those years ago if I was going to overcome food and body obsession, I just never would have believed you. I never would have believed that there was anything on the other side for me, other than total obsession with everything that I was eating, because I always thought that I had to maintain what I was doing. Even if I was past the point of losing weight, I still thought that I had to think about it all the time in order to not gain it back. It just was always on my mind. So I felt very lost. I want you guys to know that I felt very lost and I felt very upset. But the one thing that you guys have going for you that I didn't even have going for me at the time was that you have someone here who's willing to share with you the exact steps for how to get through this. And you're here and you're open and you want to learn and you want to get through this. And I didn't even know it was a problem. I just knew that I was miserable at the time. So you have this going for you, and all you need to do from here is to keep showing up. And I know that this work is hard. I know how hard it was to sit down last night and to write about your obsession with food and all the diets that you've been on. And I know that it's hard to even think about ever having compassion for yourself or to even think about accepting your body. But I promise you that this is not only something that I've done for myself, but that I have walked other women through this process, as I talked about yesterday with the ravine, where I just feel like I know the steps. If you can just listen to me and take it one step at a time, I will get you to the other side. So I want you to know that there's hope for you and that we are going to conquer this together. So all you have to do is just keep showing up each day. All you have to do is just to commit to a few minutes a night to doing this homework, and really developing an awareness is what we're trying to do right now, because that awareness, without that awareness, you're just going to go through life on autopilot. And right now your autopilot is not doing you any favors. We need to create a new autopilot. And that's the autopilot that I experience now, where I feel free and I take care of myself. And it's the autopilot that my clients and the women in my mentorship are operating on now. And it's happening more and more naturally the more they learn. So all you need to do is just keep showing up and keep an open mind, because this is very different from the typical diet and fitness industry, right? You've probably not heard any of this before. And I do think that it's gaining some steam, and I'm real excited about that. I'm real excited that people in the industry are starting to listen and understand how disordered the entire fitness industry is right now. And I do think that it's gaining some traction, but you have to be open-minded to hearing it. And I really commend you for doing that and for being here and being open-minded to these things. So we reviewed our stories yesterday, and now we're going to build on that. We're going to take a look back at why we ended up this obsessed with food in our bodies, because the one completely leads to the other. And I want you to kind of think about why that might be today, because when you are obsessed with your body, you're always going to be thinking about food. It might not be food. It might be exercise. For me, it was both. I was obsessed with food and exercise as a form of controlling my body and getting my body into an acceptable form. And the thing that is at the very root of all of this, if you can think about your life and the way that you're living your life and your healthy habits as a tree, and you can think about the roots under the surface, and then there's the trunk that goes up, and then there's the branches and the leaves. The leaves are the results that you're getting, right? It's what's happening in your life right now. But the roots that are under the surface that you haven't probably explored is like your your self-worth. This all comes down to self-worth. And that's a lot of the reason why the women who go through this with me, we do this deep root level work first before we ever talk about the nutritious foods to eat and, the exercise we're going to do. We get to the self-worth part first, because if you don't ever address that, then you're never going to be able to, these things are never going to be able to happen naturally, because you're trying to force something without nurturing the reason why it's happening, why you're not fixing the very reason why it's happening. So a lot of the people who get into these programs with me, they don't know how to describe it to their friends. They're like, this is that spiritual fitness program, which is funny. And I love that so much, because that is what we do. It's mostly, we're working on changing from the inside out, because that's the secret to permanent habit change. And if you don't fix what's broken, you're just going to keep getting the same results over and over again. So if you've yo-yo dieted the way that I did in my 20s, or if you're experiencing those feelings of restriction, like you're always having to be careful about what you're doing, then chances are that's a result of the way you're thinking about yourself and your mindset. So that's going to keep happening if we don't get down to it. So I want to get to the reason why we don't have the self-worth is the obsession with the way that women and the way that we look in society. We live in a society that is very, very focused on the way that a woman looks and the way her body looks. From the time we're young girls, we get these messages. And I want you to think about, and I want you to understand this too. Every time you watch TV, every time you watch a movie, every time you read a book, every time you scroll through social media, you are hypnotized. This is not me just being dramatic. This is the truth. Your brain is hypnotized because you're getting into the state of taking things in, and you're subconsciously programming yourself when you're hypnotized. So anytime that you were a little girl and you were watching a movie where they celebrated a woman's beauty, or they celebrated the way she looked, or they diminished her down to that, is maybe celebrated is not the best word, diminished her down to the way that she looked. Which if you can go back and see it through my eyes now, I get really angry. and I was a child of the 80s. And so we were the worst, like the 80s was one of the worst about that. It was very surface level, very just all about beauty for women. And so we were very programmed from a young age that we are to be deduced down to the shape of our body and the way that we look. So this created deep neurological connections in our brain. And so for many of us, and I hear this all the time with my clients, we also had our mothers who were always on diets. Diet culture was huge in the 80s and 90s. Since the 50s, and it's been growing and growing, but really took on something really extreme in the 80s and 90s and today. So it became totally normal for a woman, for people. My dad was on diets too, to be on diets, to be restricting food, to be always in that battle with your body. And it was an answer. It was a swing. Our society did start to gain some weight, and obesity did become a problem. And our society, as it tends to do, swung over from this extreme all the way to the other extreme, which was now food is bad. And, extreme eating, and we, instead of learning to live with the way that things were in current society with fast food and, stress and fast paced lives, what we did was we set these completely, ridiculous standards for ourselves, and we came up with unsustainable ways of living, which is diets. They're not sustainable for 90% of people, because they're, as I said yesterday, they're so black or white. It's not going to work for most people's lives, because we're all so different in so many different ways. So social media now in the 2019s and the 2010s and into the future has taken this to a whole new level, with likes, with comments, seeing the highlight reels of other people's lives rather than the behind the scenes of what's actually going on. We feel like failures when we're scrolling through social media and we see, and this is not just with our bodies, this is with, the way we mother and our parenting. Whether or not we're making homemade Halloween costumes is something I've been hearing a lot lately. It's something that really has changed the landscape of our society once again. And so we're navigating when we post a picture and my daughter is 16 years old, and I see her social media, she'll post a picture of herself and it's just comment after comment after comment of how beautiful she is, which is great. It's okay to be beautiful and it's okay for people to think you're beautiful, but that's the whole focus. There's no like, you're such a good person, you light up a room, you're such a kind-hearted soul, which she is. She's all of those things. You're so smart. You're so talented. I could go on and on about my daughter because I adore her. But that is who she is as a whole person. But our society is so focused on just the one thing, which is our looks. So what this does is it sends us a message throughout our lives as we are growing up. Especially, I'm very worried for my daughter's generation, but because of what I just said. But for us, it happened to us too. Chances are at some point in our lives we lost some weight, and all of a sudden people are like, wow, you look great. And of course their intention is they mean to give us a compliment, because that's what they've been taught is good, is, losing weight and being thin is good and gaining weight is bad. So all these little things that are programmed into our societies give us this underlying feeling like, if I gain weight, I won't be good enough anymore. If I don't lose this weight of pregnancy, I will not be good enough anymore. If I am not a size XYZ, then I am not beautiful in this society. People won't respect me. People won't, think that I am attractive. People won't think I'm worth it. So this is kind of this underlying thing, and it tends to really ramp up after we have a baby, because no other time in our lives do our bodies change more than when we have a baby. And it's not just during pregnancy, it's after pregnancy too. Our bodies are just different after we have babies, which is totally normal, by the way. And in any other time in our society, it would have been just a thing. But in current times, the thing is to bounce back and to have our teenage bodies again, which is so, unrealistic. It's so unrealistic when you think about it. So we are trying to get back to this body that we had before we ever had children. And maybe we're not. Maybe we're just aiming to lose some of the weight of pregnancy. But whatever it is, we have this feeling like we're not okay if we're not back to normal, if we're not back to ourselves. And so this creates this anxiety. It creates this underlying anxiety that we have to get our body back and we have to bounce back. And we hear messages. I talked about this in an email last week. If you're on my email list, one of the things that I heard a lot of when I had my fourth child that I didn't like and that I wrote about frequently was no excuses. There was an entire group on social media called No Excuses Moms. And I can't stand that, because we have tons of excuses. We have all these little kids, and also we shouldn't be doing this I don't owe an explanation or an excuse to anyone. We shouldn't be doing this for everyone else. This is for me. And whatever I do for self-care is for me. I'm going to go off on a tangent if I go down that road, because it really was something that really bothered me. But what you need to know is that you don't need to do this for anyone else, and you don't need to do this for anyone but yourself. And when I say this, I mean take care of yourself. So anyways, in our culture, there's this feeling, we get this feeling from, being out in social media and just from our friends. When we have conversations with other women who've had babies, we try to one up each other with no, my body is disgusting. No, my body's worse. Have you ever done that with your friends before? I know that we have. Even just a few weeks ago, my friends and I had started down that rabbit hole, and one of us finally was like, wait a minute, stop. And so we bond over this hatred of our bodies, and we one up each other with how disgusting we think our bodies are. It's just normal. It's so normal in the society, and nobody's stopping to really think about what that's doing to us. And so because of this conditioning, our society has all been programmed this way. Everyone out there believes that we have to be this or we have to be that. And no one's stopping and questioning why, except for me. I'm questioning why. And the reason that I want to question it is because of that anxiety that it creates in women. Especially after having a baby. And then I'm still talking to women now whose babies were born years and years ago, and they are still struggling as a woman with, I need to change. I need to lose weight. I need my body to be different. I need to do all these things different because I'm not worthy the way that I am. And so this goes on and on and on. This doesn't just stop right after we have a baby. And I promise you that even for me, it didn't stop when I lost the weight either. It kept going. Even if you don't, I lost the weight and I kept wanting to be more and more extreme with my body because I didn't feel worthy. But for other people, you might lose the weight and then it transfers over to something else. And maybe instead of focusing on your body, you're focusing on, I'm not a good mom, or I don't have as much money as they do. It's always going to be something. This is why I say that this is going to be, all of this is just a side effect of your relationship with yourself. So let's see. One of the things that people do in our society is, as I mentioned earlier, we tend to compliment people with looks, and I'm still guilty of this somehow or sometimes, and I try to catch myself doing this, but this will reinforce it throughout your life and throughout your day when people are like, you look so great. And so something I've been trying to do myself is trying to say something like, your energy is so beautiful, you light up a room, you're so smart, you're so intelligent. But because it reinforces to other people that this is where our worth lies, in our subconscious. And also in our society, one of the biggest put downs that you can call a woman is to call her fat. So it's no wonder that we're afraid to gain weight, or not to gain weight. We're scared to not gain weight, and we're scared to gain weight, and we're also afraid to not lose it. So it's this just constant anxiety that we're experiencing. And I talk to women every single day who say to me, I am so afraid that I will never lose this weight, or I am so afraid that I will gain weight. People are really fearful of this. And that's because it's just so unacceptable in this society. So it's as though no matter how wonderful someone is, what they do for others, their kindness, their career accomplishments, the love that they bring to their families, the love they bring to other people, they can be reduced to the shape of their body with one single comment. And they do this to themselves way more than other people ever do it to them too. It's almost like we're trying to get ahead of what someone else is going to say to us, so we put ourselves down and we keep ourselves in that state. But that is such a huge contributing cause to food and body obsession. And because of this, because we're going through our lives feeling like we need to measure up to society, we develop this really rigid avatar in our heads of what we think we should look like. And we develop this based on what we think society thinks we should look like, and what we've looked like in the past, before we had children, or before when we were younger. Our bodies change as we age too. But we have some kind of like checklist, right? That we are trying to check these boxes off one after the next. I need to be this size. I need to lose this much weight. I need to look like this. I need to not have a wrinkle on my face. And that is somewhere in our heads, and it's driving our behaviors, and it's driving our motivation. And that's the root. When I talk about the tree, that's where the problem lies, in those roots. That's what's making us crazy and making us do these crazy diets that are leading to these disordered eating patterns. So, when we develop this rigid avatar in our mind, we probably develop it when we're younger, before we ever have children. And so then we have children and our bodies change, and then we freak out. And that's why it's so common for moms. It's so common for moms to feel like they don't measure up, and like that panic of, oh my God, what's happening to my body? I get hundreds of emails, hundreds saying, please help me. I don't want to gain weight with this pregnancy. Please help me. I can't lose this weight of pregnancy. People are desperate to not have their body change, but they're fighting something that's natural and that happens naturally with our bodies and with pregnancy. So we don't even allow our bodies the grace and time to heal from birth half the time. A lot of the people the women that I talk to are ready to start coaching 2 weeks. They want me to start them on a diet. They want me to start them working out 2 weeks out from having a baby. I've had people as early as like 3 days out of the hospital contact me and ask me if I can help, like, oh my God, I'm not losing weight, even though they had the baby 3 days earlier. It's very common. Like, it might sound shocking, but it's very common. And I bet if you think back, you were starting to think about these things after you had your baby too. And it's this frantic energy. It's this frantic, anxiety that we have that we're never going to get back to being worthy because our bodies have changed. So, and then some people don't have the time or energy with kids to even devote to diet and exercise, but their mind won't let go, and their mind won't let go of this is what I should be, that avatar that they created in their heads of what they should look like. And so they are thinking about it all the time, and they're stuck in the misery gap. And the misery gap is this really uncomfortable place between what you want or what you think your avatar is, what you think you should be at this point in your life, and where you actually are. And this whole gap right here, that's miserable. It being between where you want to be and where you actually are. And the way to change that, the misery gap comes together, and you start becoming less and less miserable when you do a combination of taking action to change the thing that you want to change, and also some acceptance. And the acceptance part is where everyone has the hardest part. We can take actions, but and that will only do so much. But after having a baby, there's going to be some acceptance happening too. And if you're doing all the things and taking all the action and things are not changing, then without some acceptance that this is part of the process, or this is what's going to happen, or maybe this is just what my body does, this is where my body's happy right now, then there's still going to be some misery because you still expect things to be changing, and they're not. So the misery gap, I totally ripped that off from Eckhart Tolle, by the way. So shout out to Eckhart. So this leads us to body image and to poor body image and obsession, in which we're going to talk about much more detail tomorrow. Exactly how this contributes to our food and body obsession. But you can probably already start to guess, right? When you have this frantic energy and you have this frantic panic, it's going to make you do things that you might not rationally do otherwise, because you really feel on some level like you're going to be rejected from society. And maybe that's not on a conscious note, but it's subconscious. And part of that is our primal need to be accepted by our society, accepted by our tribe, because back in the days of our ancestors, that was important, because if we weren't accepted, it meant death. So this is very frantic energy. It's a very frantic feeling, and we get stuck here. And we need to learn how to take some action, yes, towards changing what we're doing and changing our habits to the point that we can, and we can control the things that we can control, that we're capable of controlling. But the other side to that, to get out of that misery gap, is to also practice some acceptance and bring that misery gap together. So that's what we're going to be working on this week. That's what I work on in the mentorship with my ladies. That's what I work on in my one-on-one programs with my ladies. It's a combination of those two things. And that is why they all experience such high levels of happiness and feeling of freedom, is because they've done those two things together and they've closed the misery gap. Okay, so that is the end of my lesson for day 2, but you are going to have some homework today. I want you to figure out what your avatar is. And sometimes with my ladies in the mentorship and my one-on-one clients, I will actually have them draw it. Draw a picture of what you think is your avatar. What are you subconsciously trying to live up to? Is there an old version of yourself, maybe younger? I know for the longest time I was comparing myself to my 19-year-old self. I am 43 years old. And it doesn't matter if I was 22 years old, comparing myself to being 19. 19 is like, you barely have hit puberty at that point. But I know, and that sounds so funny, and maybe you're laughing right now, but it is so common for me to hear, back when I was in college, I looked like this. And back when I was in, when I was like doing rowing every day in college, I looked like this and I want to look like that again. So it's just, we haven't, a lot of the times we're not rationally examining the avatar that we think that we should be living up to. So I want you to create that avatar. You can draw it. You can just write a list of what you think you should be. And what do you think you have to be? Where did that avatar come from? Where did you develop it? Are you comparing yourself to an old version of yourself? Or are you, did you get it from, programming from media, from social media, from TV, from growing up watching TV, from your mom, from the grown-ups around you? And then are you stuck in the misery gap? Are you somewhere, and chances are if you're watching this workshop that you probably are stuck somewhere in the misery gap. So are you in between, the place where are you stuck in this miserable place between where you think you should be, that avatar, and where you actually are? And are you feeling that misery right here? And so I also want you to do one more thing. So I want you to create your avatar and to journal about it a little bit and to kind of investigate it, because again, awareness is the key here. And it's the very first step to changing anything is to become aware of your motivations, because sometimes you might be like, oh, that came from my avatar and I don't need that anymore. I'm going to rise above it. But if you're not aware of it happening, you can't change it and you can't break that pattern. So the second thing I want you to do is to go, and this is going to be hard, but I want you to go and unfollow all social media accounts that make you feel like crap about yourself, that make you say, and this doesn't mean it's permanent. You can always go back and follow them later when you're in a better mental place. But if you find yourself comparing yourself to this person all the time, or this person is making you feel, or their actions or whatever it is that they're doing is making you feel less than and like you should be doing more, or you're comparing yourself to them a lot, even if it's like me, even if it's your closest, like your sister or your closest friend, you don't have to even unfollow them, just mute them. Did you know that you can do that? You can mute accounts so that they don't know that you don't want to see them, and you don't have to hurt anyone's feelings, and mute that account so that you don't, because we create our mental environment, and this is something that we're going to be learning, is that right now our mental environment has been programmed by all these outside sources, and we've just been kind of mindlessly letting stuff in because we didn't realize what it was doing to us. Now is the time to take control. And now is the time that we start to realize that we have the power to curate our mental environment. We can allow what comes in, we can allow what we accept, and we can start to pick and choose the things that are going to make us feel good instead of the things that make us feel bad, the things that make us feel empowered rather than make us feel disempowered. So I really want you to think about who you're following, what you're watching on social media, what you're watching on TV even, and your mental environment and the things that you're letting in. And if that is something that's causing you stress, causing you anxiety, then it's time to unfollow those things. So that's your homework. Create your avatar. What do you think you have to be? Where did that avatar come from? And are you stuck in the misery gap? Answer those questions, and then finally go unfollow all the social media and start to really think about your mental environment and where those things are coming from. Tomorrow we're going to go deeper into the food aspect of this, which is how food obsession is born from this low self-worth and this body image problem that we have. And just really dive deep into the whole idea of fear versus love. And that's going to be a very interesting conversation that I'm excited to have with you. But do your homework. As always, again, I loved getting your homework assignments last night and this morning. You can email it to me. You can tag me on social media. You can DM me, whatever you want to do. I love hearing from you guys. So I'm happy to read over. I may not get back to every single person, but I would love to hear what you have come up with on your own and any kind of breakthroughs that you're having. There's already been some big ones. So, all right, guys, this has been awesome. And I will be back tomorrow. I am going to be a little bit later than I have been the rest of the week. Tomorrow I will be on at 1:30 instead of 12 noon. So, and that's Central Standard Time. So it's going to be just a little bit later. I am actually going to tour a new school for my son because it's been so rough this year. So I'm going to go tour a new school for him in the morning, and excited about that. But because of that, going to be just a little bit later. So I'll see you guys here at 1:30 Central Standard Time tomorrow. Do your homework, send it to me, tag me, and I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.